Dan Martin here, and it's on education. And today we're going to be talking about growth mindset. Have you ever heard the expression, if you think you can, or if you think you can't, you probably will? And so that leads us to feel like that our attitudes about our ability to achieve things influence our performance. And certainly that is the case. Have you ever had a child come up to you and say, I really suck at science, or I really suck at math, or I really suck at English, and you're not going to be able to teach me anything? And so the battle becomes changing their mind and getting them to have some confidence in their own abilities within your subject matter. And I found that a lot of times when a student starts off with that kind of mindset, that closed mindset, that it's more difficult to teach them the subject matter at hand. And so today we're going to be talking about what is a growth mindset, what is a fixed mindset, and then we're going to look at some studies to see if mediation helps improve student performance. Okay, so what is exactly a growth mindset? Well, a famous psychologist by the name of Carol Dweck and her colleagues defined it this way. They said, the belief that a person's capabilities and talents can improve over time. And she wrote a book about her studies called Mindset, The New Psychology of Success. She also had a really powerful TED Talk that you can look up to, and I'll provide references below for those that article and TED Talk. So Dweck's initial studies were conducted with hundreds of students, mostly adolescents, and she found something that was quite startling. She found that students with a fixed mindset will reject learning if it means not failing. So students were given a fairly challenging problem, a nonverbal IQ test, then praised for their performance. Some students were told, wow, you got X number right. That's a really good score. You must be smart at this. And then other students were told, wow, you got X many right. That's a really good score. You must have worked really hard. In other words, some were praised for ability and others were praised for effort. Dweck writes, the ability praised pushed students right into a fixed mindset, and they showed all the signs of it too. When we gave them a choice, they rejected a challenging new task that they could learn from. They didn't want to do something that would expose their flaws and call into question their talents. And so this whole thing kind of highlights the need of not praising native intelligence or telling kids that they're smart, but to praise effort. And so here are some of the ways that you can tell if an adolescent or a student has a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. So let's start with a fixed mindset first. Students that have a fixed mindset are afraid of challenges. They avoid situations where they can make mistakes. They feel like they're either good or bad at certain tasks, and they feel like their intelligence is fixed, and they shrink when they're criticized. Students with growth mindsets love challenges. They're not discouraged by setbacks. They feel confident that they can improve, and they feel intelligence is not static. They relish feedback. And I can think back to lots of my students over the years. I had this one young man that came into my classroom, and he was taking honors chemistry class, and he was a freshman. And he rolled in there, and he wasn't particularly a good-looking kid. He was a little bit overweight, but he was very personable. And he always felt like no matter what he got on an exam, it never discouraged him. He always felt like that he could attract the most beautiful girl in the class, and he just had exuded confidence, and we always said that he was going to make great strides in his life and get a lot done. And then I've had other examples would be I've had other students in class come in, and they would just be concentrating on their grade. They wouldn't they would get really discouraged if they got a bad grade on a test. They wanted to know how to improve their grade, and their whole emphasis was on proving how smart they were. And therefore, if they ever made a mistake, it would almost crush them. And they weren't used to making mistakes because they put fourth grade effort. But any kind of setback or anything like that would just crush them. And so, how do you develop the mindset that you're going to achieve no matter what the circumstances are, no matter how tough it gets? And that's what we're going to discuss in our discussion as we go along. Okay, so how does having a growth mindset improve performance? And so I was curious to see if there had been any work done on this, and I pulled up several articles that have been done, but the one that really had a nice glossary of the work that has been done was one entitled "An Online Growth Mindset Intervention in a Sample of Rural Adolescent Girls." And the main author here is Burnett. They have Burnett and Russell listed first, and it was published in the British Journal of Education Psychology in 2018. And I'll provide the references for these articles so that you can look at them yourself. And in their glossary, they went through and cited the most current research at the time of growth mindset interventions. And what they found was that there are authors that have reported improvement in student performance and grade point averages. But having said that, it was kind of a hit and miss type of thing. Some of the authors in their studies found that there was absolutely no difference after their interventions. And usually their interventions were some sort of survey that they took after encouraging the students and trying to alter their opinions of tackling hard tasks and so forth. And the studies were really only conducted for a very short period of time, maybe a year or so. And so it's not surprising that they got mixed results. What they found was here, they said, however, despite many successful interventions, some work has failed to find results. And they go on to mention that some of the ones that didn't find results were underpowered, which means that their sample sizes weren't very large and that sort of thing. And so I think it's not surprising that that this occurred because really, when you only do a brief intervention, maybe at the beginning of somebody's freshman year, and don't follow through to see how it would affect their performance in subsequent years if you did the same type of encouragement and interventions, I think that you would maybe find different results if it were a longer term study. Having said that, however, let's look at another study here that was conducted, and this one was a larger study, and it was the largest one that I found. And it is entitled "Using a Growth Mindset Intervention to Help Ninth Graders, an Independent Evaluation of the National Study of Learning Mindsets." Okay, and so it lists Zaya, Pita, Garcia, Ivani, Boxer, and so forth as its authors. And so what they did was they tested growth mindset interventions with a larger set of students. And this was conducted by the National Study of Learning Mindsets. And so that gives you an idea of maybe that they have some sort of stake in the results that the group is called that but hopefully that was not the case. So they implemented a low-cost growth mindset intervention specifically designed for ninth graders in a nationally represented sample of regular high school students between 2015 and 2016. The national study used a student-level randomized control trial designed to gauge the impacts of the intervention of student mindsets. This was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation partially. And so what they found here, or their stated findings in the abstract, were the intervention changed students' self-reported mindset beliefs, their attitudes towards efforts and failure, and their views on academic challenges. Immediately after the intervention, students were more likely to take on challenging academic tasks. The intervention produced statistically significant impacts on students' average academic performance, improving their grade point average as well as their math GPA and reducing the proportion of students with failing grades. Certain groups of students and schools might benefit more from interventions than others. These groups include students with relatively low academic achievement before the intervention, students in the mid-range of academic performance spectrum, and schools where students are more inclined to take on challenging tasks. These findings are substantially consistent with the results published by the NSLM research team. Okay, so that's all well and good, and I wanted to look at the data that they presented. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so the changes in their beliefs, and so they gave them a survey and asked them to rate the following ideas between a scale of 1 to 6. 1, strongly disagree, to 6, strongly agree. So the type of questions they asked are as follows. You have a certain amount of intelligence and you really can't do much to change it. Well, the program response was 2.23, and the control response was 2.59, and they said that was a significant difference. So more students in the program tended to disagree with that statement. It says here, your intellect is something about you that you can't change. Well, again, the program response was lower than the control. And so most all these statements denoting a more positive attitude toward learning and taking on challenging tasks were improved by the intervention. Except for this very last one. It says here, I can get a higher score next time if I find a better way to study. And so the response was about the same for both of those. However, the attitudes of the students were fairly good when it comes to improving their study habits. It was 4.5 and just under 4.5 for it was 4.54 for the program students, and the control students thought that they could improve by improving their study habits, and their strongly agree score there out of 6 was 4.53. So there was no difference in between the groups on that. And so I don't find that particularly shocking, and I think that's great that the encouragement and the intervention seem to work here. Now let's talk about the actual performance of the students, and this is what I find a little bit more interesting, and maybe something that we can look at in more detail. And so let's look at the GPAs of the students in the program and outside the program. And they say that they're significant here, but if you look at the raw data here, the students in the program had a cumulative grade point average of 2.59. And the students that were not in the program had a GPA of 2.55. And so only 0.04 of a difference there. And they're noting that this is significant. And when I looked at that, I thought, wow, that's a very, very small difference to note significance. And I think the thing that's notable here is that there was a tremendous number of students in the sample population. It says here in the notes the number of observations is 11,888 for the GPA. And so you can see there that whenever you have a large number, everything tends to gravitate toward the mean. And they're doing a t-test type of evaluation for significance. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but usually t-tests are used for smaller population size. And I saw that there is some disagreement on whether that you should use a t-test for larger populations. But a little bit better, and whether it's significant or not, couldn't tell you really. They say it is, so maybe we should take their word for it. Poor performance. Okay, so these are students that have a failing grade point average. What is noted here, poor performance is indicated when average GPA is 1.0 or lower. All right, so this t-test said that the students in the program, the number of failing students dropped substantially from 29.7 in the program group to 32.1 in the control group. And so they noted a substantial difference in being able to intervene in students having those very, very low grade point averages. Math GPA here, again, a slight difference between the students that underwent the intervention, the program students, and the students that did not go through the program. All right, so let's kind of just generally discuss this for a minute. This was a large study, and so they have a lot of data here, so it wasn't at all underpowered. But it was only for a year, and how much you can really change students' attitudes in a year, I'm very skeptical of. Maybe the grades themselves didn't improve all that much, but certainly you can't argue with the results of lowering the number of students that potentially would drop out of high school. If you have a grade point average under 1, it's very likely that you're going to have some issues with those students as they go along, and maybe encouraging those and maybe getting those students to believe in themselves a little bit more is definitely worth the effort. So this is an article that I want to discuss here. It's called "The Assumptions Are Made." What assumptions are made when conducting a t-test? And this is by J.B. Maverick, and it's reviewed by Michael J. Boyle. And just some general observations here. T-tests are commonly used in statistics and economics to establish the value of two outcomes or variables are different from one another. The common assumption made when doing a t-test include those regarding the scale of measurement, random sampling, normality of data distribution, adequacy of sample size, and equality of variance in standard deviation. Okay, so it says here, a t-test is a statistical method used to determine if there is a significant difference between the means of two groups based on a sample of data. All right, so that gives me some concern about this last test because it really wasn't a sample. It was all the kids. They probably would have gotten better results if they did some random sampling and decreased their sample size. they said adequacy of sample size. Well, the adequate sample size is very low in a t-test. And so that's one of the concerns I had with using a t-test here. The test relies on a set of assumptions for it to be interpreted properly and with validity. Among these assumptions is the data must be sampled from the population of interest and variables must follow a normal distribution. And I don't think that there's any problem with that large of a population following a normal distribution. And so I think that those things are okay. But the fact that it really wasn't a sample and it was a large group of students makes me believe that maybe they should have used some other type of statistical analysis. So here it says hypothesis in which the statistics being tested for is expected to correspond to a t-distribution if the null hypothesis is supported. And so this whole thing of null hypothesis means that you reject the null hypothesis that there's no difference. And that's what they did. They said that there was a difference. And that's okay. A t-test is an analysis of two population means through the use of statistical examination. A t-test with two samples is commonly used with small sample sizes, testing with differences between two samples when the variance of two normal distributions are not known. And so, again, small sample sizes is one of the things that these authors kind of emphasize. Now, I did look online, and there were other people that said using a t-test with larger sample sizes was okay or valid, and they said that that you had to be careful with your degrees of freedom, and certainly the authors here, no doubt, did that. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt, but I got an important question for you. Do you have a special skill or talent that you need to share with the world? Maybe you're an excellent photographer, or maybe you're an excellent woodworker or crafter or cook. There are any number of things that people do every day and really enjoy and do well that they need to share with others. And so let the good people at Teachable lead you through the process of designing your own online course. It's really enjoyable, plus you can make some extra money, and I've included a link down below. Maybe your special talent is commenting on videos and blogs. And so there is a place called Paid Online Writing Jobs. And I've included a post down below where you can make money per hour reviewing and writing for others. And so this is a real cool site as well. Maybe you got that back to school blues and you're dreading going out to the stores to buy school supplies for your students. And I'm going to encourage you this year to do a lot of your shopping online. One thing, you don't have to buy from depleted store shelves. You can always pick exactly what you want and find exactly what you need. And so I'll provide a Walmart link down below where you can go and shop for your school supplies. Now, when you click on an affiliate link of mine, it won't ever cost you anything extra, but I'll get a small percentage of the sale that will help me create more content for you. So hopefully you're enjoying the podcast, and we'll get right back to it. Thanks. Okay, my view here. Okay, certainly we need to encourage students to develop a growth mindset in the classroom. That whole saying, if you think you can or you think you can't, you probably will. And I think that is definitely something that we need to do. I feel that it's not going to be a cure for all things. Certainly your attitude determines your altitude, as they say, but there are other factors involved as well. And we will, in It's On Education, discuss lots and lots of those factors. Certainly in the age of COVID and what we've been through, we have our hands full in terms of getting our students caught up and encouraging learning. Probably the only good thing that's come out of this is that parents are more aware of what's going on in the classroom and want to be more involved. And I think that that's a great, great thing. My dad always said he could tell a good school from a bad school. He said, a good school, when you drive by during parent-teacher conference, you can't find a parking spot. A bad school, you can't, you can park right in the front row. There's not a whole lot of cars there. So parent involvement is crucial in the education of our children. And so I think it's been a good thing that parents have become more aware and involved in the education of our youth. Also, in the next few podcasts, in the next podcast, we're going to talk about ways to actually encourage this growth mindset. And I'll also propose some changes in our system that will encourage growth in our students. I think a lot of the things that we do in terms of our emphasis on grades, our time delimited classes, and there's all sorts of things that we do that I think that we kind of discourage a growth mindset. In fact, it's just the opposite. We encourage a fixed mindset. We don't encourage students to take harder classes because of this whole thing of grade point average. So, but we'll get into that next time. And so I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you found it valuable. And we will talk about ways to encourage a growth mindset in the next couple of videos. Peace.